Serenity Valley Stories introduces The Whispering Pines. I had always preferred camping alone. There was something about the solitude, the quiet, the feeling of being truly isolated that resonated with me. It was a kind of therapy, a way to escape the chaos of daily life. That's why I found myself deep in the woods of the Appalachian Mountains, miles away from any semblance of civilization. The sun was setting as I set up my small tent in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. The air was thick with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, a fragrance that always brought me a sense of peace. I had chosen this spot because it was far from the usual trails, somewhere I could be truly alone. Or so I thought. As night fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nature. Crickets chirped in a steady rhythm, an owl hooted somewhere in the distance, and the wind whispered through the trees, creating a symphony of rustling leaves. I built a small fire, its crackling adding to the chorus of the night. The warmth of the flames was comforting against the chill that settled with the darkness. I sat there, staring into the fire, lost in thought when I first heard it, a rustling in the bushes just beyond the light of the fire. At first, I dismissed it as a deer or some other nocturnal creature. But then, the sound grew louder, closer. My heart began to race, and I strained my ears, trying to make out what it could be. The forest around me fell eerily silent, the usual night sounds abruptly ceasing as if something had scared them away. That's when I caught a whiff of something foul, like rotting meat mixed with wet fur. The smell was so strong it made my stomach churn. I stood up, my eyes scanning the darkness just beyond the reach of the firelight. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering despite my attempt to sound confident. Silence. Then, the rustling started again, this time moving around the clearing, circling me. I could hear the snapping of twigs, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, but I couldn't see anything beyond the flickering light of the fire. The smell grew stronger, more pungent, and with it, an overwhelming sense of dread. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it toward the noise, but the beam barely penetrated the thick darkness. I saw nothing, but I could feel something watching me, something just out of sight. My instincts screamed at me to run, but where could I go? I was miles from my car, from any form of safety. The rustling stopped abruptly, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then, a voice, my voice, echoed through the trees. "Who's there?" I froze, my blood turning to ice. It was as if someone had recorded my earlier question and played it back to me. But there was something off about it, a distortion that made it sound almost mocking. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "Who's there?" the voice repeated, this time closer, more insistent. I backed away from the fire, my mind racing. I knew what this was. I had heard stories, legends told around campfires. Stories of creatures that could mimic voices, lure you into the darkness. Stories of skinwalkers. My pulse quickened, and I knew I had to get out of there. I quickly packed up what little I could carry, my flashlight, a knife, some food, and doused the fire. The darkness closed in around me, and the cold night air seemed to tighten its grip on my throat. As I started to leave the clearing, I heard it again. "Who's there?" The voice was so close now, as if it were right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I bolted into the woods, my feet pounding against the ground, the branches tearing at my clothes as I ran. The smell of rot followed me, growing stronger, almost suffocating. The voice continued to call out, growing more frantic, more distorted. I knew I couldn't let it catch me. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, my lungs burning, my legs screaming in protest. But the forest was unforgiving. In my panic, I stumbled over a root and fell hard to the ground, the wind knocked out of me. For a moment, I lay there, gasping for air, the world spinning around me. The voice was closer now, so close it felt like it was inside my head. With a surge of adrenaline, I scrambled to my feet and continued running, not daring to look back. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. My only hope was to make it to the car, to get out of these cursed woods. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I burst out of the trees and onto the dirt road where my car was parked. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, but I managed to get the door open and throw myself inside. I started the engine and tore out of there, the tires kicking up gravel as I sped down the road. As I drove, I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror, afraid of what I might see. The smell was gone, the voice silenced, but the fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. It wasn't until I was miles away, back on the main road, that I finally allowed myself to breathe. I was safe. I had escaped. But as I drove through the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting. And in the distance, carried on the wind, I thought I heard a faint whisper, "Who's there?" Thank you for listening to Serenity Valley Stories, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.